Welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Sight Screen Cricket Journal podcast. I'm your host, Tawhid Qureshi, and today we're going to talk about the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. We're about the halfway stage in the Super 12 phase of the competition, so there's lots of stuff to reflect on, but actually specifically we're going to be looking at how Zimbabwe and Bangladesh have fared. They've got a crunch game that they'll be playing in a couple of days' time. So we'll be previewing that as well, but also looking back at Zimbabwe's stunning victory against Pakistan just 24 hours or so ago. And to join me to talk about all of this is a fantastic cricket writer. He's someone who I think really evokes the spirit and the emotion of Zimbabwe cricket. I would say even if you don't like cricket, you can most certainly enjoy his writing. He's Liam Brickhill. Welcome, Liam.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks so much for having me on. And that's quite an intro. I'm flattered. Thank you so much.
No problem. It's great to have you on, and it's absolutely genuine what I say. I mean, some of your cricket writing is really does kind of take the reader to the place, to that spot in the Harare Sports Stadium ground. So yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I urge everyone to look that up and have a read of what Liam does. But yeah, today to kind of kick off, it's been just over 24 hours since that stunning win against Pakistan. I mean, have you, on a personal level, had time to sort of process exactly what's happened?
I'm gently floating back down to earth slowly. Yeah, what a match! What a we don't often talk about T20s having a narrative in the same way that a test match might have a narrative, a kind of a twist and turn kind of story, and that game kind of had all of that, and it was an incredible thing to witness, and it's really kind of era defining almost. I get the feeling for this Zimbabwean team to be at a World Cup. And there's a lot of kind of serendipitous moving parts to all of this as well. To be at a World Cup 20 years after the last time Dave Houghton coached a Zimbabwe team to a World Cup, when Zimbabwe finished fifth in England, and had these kind of famous era-defining victories for that 1990s team. And now for this team that's lived in the shadow of kind of some of Zimbabwe's former glories, to really kind of step out of the shadows and show what they can do on the biggest stage, in a really tight game. That was the other thing that has stayed with me, that has kind of soaked in since the result is, Zim have beaten all sorts of teams kind of over the years now and then, but it's not often the case that, especially recently, that Zim might have won a tight game like that. Like winning a game by one run, like they might turn over an opposition early, get on top of them, and someone has the opposition have a bad day and Zimbabwe win, and that's great. But to play in a match where the result isn't decided literally until the last ball, and to come out on top, is all the rarer for a Zimbabwean cricket fan, which I guess is also what I am at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to think of myself as a Bangladesh cricket fan at the end of the day, and I think that those kind of victories really do resonate all the more because of that. And actually, those sorts of victories bring out those kind of fan feelings.
Absolutely.
If I'm probably articulating that really badly.
No, not at all.
So it was obviously a really memorable victory, and it's interesting what you say in terms of, I know we always have a bit of a tendency these days to try to rank wins. Is this the best Zimbabwe win ever, for example? But I think I kind of joined the post-match press conference via Zoom, and I think someone did ask. So it was Secunda Raza who was in the press conference, and someone asked him that, and I think he kind of said it for him anyway. It was the best kind of moment that he could remember for Zimbabwe cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also not a fan of comparing eras, though. Really, I mean, it's interesting to talk about, but in that way. But certainly for this team, for this group, Raza, has played for 10 years now. For this team that he's played, and absolutely, he's got to be up there.
And kind of interested to know about the reaction back in Zimbabwe, in Harare. I know you're actually in Cape Town at the moment, but I know you've got very strong links with Harare and the Harare Sports Club, and seen some brilliant kind of clips on social media about some of the celebrations that have taken place there. Are you getting a sense of the kind of reaction back home?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got, as you say, I do have kind of a strong connection to Zim. Of course, born there and grew up there, and I still have family there. So I have an uncle and two brothers in Zimbabwe, and my brother's actually been at Harare Sports Club watching the games on TV, and sharing videos and kind of live updates from the kind of supporters club. And what an atmosphere! I guess it is something that happens with passionate fans around the world. But I think in the Zimbabwean context, this is significant. The kind of support that this Zim team. I mean, that's another part of all the kind of moving parts around the success of this team. You've got to talk about the support as well, because Zimbabwe supporters have been along for the ride, especially in the last kind of 18 months since Zimbabwe came back from suspension, coming into the qualifiers, and now at the World Cup. There's actually an organization called the Zimbabwe Cricket Supporters Union, which has become very active, they're great. They turn up at every game. They were very active during the qualifiers and really led the vibe. And I think Raza as well, and I'm sure other members of the team, but Raza certainly has spoken about how when you have that sort of support, it raises the game. It brings that vibe. Vibe's so important for a cricket team, especially like Zim. They run on vibes, this team, and when they got a good vibe, the crowd is part of that. So I've been watching all the videos from Harare Sports Club. Amazing to see. Plenty of support. Yeah,
no, I mean, you get a sense of that support actually in Australia as well. I'm sure there's.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure I saw some videos yesterday where there's a handful of fans who are out there, probably more than a handful actually.
There are Zimbabweans all over the world. If you played cricket in any country, I guarantee you that there are some Zimbabweans there who will come and watch.
It's very similar with Bangladeshis. There are Bangladeshis all over the world, and wherever the Bangladesh team play cricket, there's always some fans popping up to watch. But yeah, like you say, it's obviously like hugely significant, and that the victory in itself has huge meaning for Zimbabwe cricket, and I guess. From my point of view, it from a very basic level, I guess it kind of raises the profile of Zimbabwe cricket, which, for various reasons has kind of been in the shadows for, let's say, probably the last 20 years. So hopefully that this victory kind of starts to change that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been kind of, I guess, since the really troublesome times of the suspension in 2019, going all the way back actually to the qualifiers in 2018. When things started to snowball. But so anyway, to kind of not to dwell on that, but to talk about how Zimbabwe has kind of come back from that. It all kind of kind of has started to come together post suspension, and I think what it really shows is what can be achieved in the Zimbabwean context when you have everyone pushing in the same direction, everyone pulling in the same direction, happy players, um, you know, solid support staff, and less of the off-field distractions. Just how quickly things can change and things can heal, and not just for Zimbabwe, but I guess for any team.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lesson there to be learned for, like you say, for lots of other teams. I'm thinking, specifically about Bangladesh, and yeah, I feel at the moment they don't have the same kind of team spirit at a very basic level that Zimbabwe have. Certainly, if you saw the way that all the Zimbabwe players were celebrating at the end of yesterday's game. I know they were all sort of dancing on the side of the boundary there, and everyone had a turn in the circle to do their dance.
It's one of the great things about this game of ours of cricket, the kind of intangibles that are somehow so important as well. You should talk about a spirit in a team or the vibe around a team, and you couldn't point to it exactly, but you know it when you see it, and it's so important to a team.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, just to say on that, it comes and goes so quickly as well. It can disappear as quickly as it appears. But not to put a dampener on Zimbabwe team spirit, but
we've been through it all. I mean, Zimbabweans have seen it all.
Absolutely. So to focus in on the game itself, so as you said, it was a real thriller, a low scoring game. Zimbabwe put into bat. Putting on a very modest 130 for 8. Sean Williams top scoring there in the middle order with 31 off 28, and then kind of no real sort of standout contributions in terms of a big innings played by anyone. Brad Evans, who we will talk about in a bit more depth, actually added a few kind of valuable runs at the end there, 19 or 15. But yeah, Zimbabwe getting up to 130 for 8. So really at that halfway stage, I think most people, I'm sure maybe even including diehard Zimbabwe supporters, thought that Pakistan should kind of get to that total quite kind of simply, but that obviously wasn't the case. So, we saw up front both Rizwan and Barber getting out fairly cheaply. Shan Masood was the only one who really kind of kept glued the innings together with 44 off 38. But it was that man again, Secunda Raza, who kind of got his crucial wicket. He actually ended up getting 3 wickets in that middle order. And then, let's maybe fast forward to that final over, and the ball's given to Brad Evans. I mean, tell us about him first of all. He's still fairly young to international cricket. Tell us about him.
Sure. Yeah. Well, he's obviously the son of Craig Evans, who played for Zimbabwe in the late 90s. Kind of played his last games for Zim. He had something of a comeback in the early 2000s as well, played some cricket, and was known as a kind of a big bruising, kind of lower middle order batter and bowled little medium paces. But Brad Evans, there was kind of he kind of popped up on the Zim cricket radar a couple of years ago. Zimbabweans do kind of, or the fan community do kind of keep a lookout for Zimbabweans playing elsewhere. As we mentioned, Zimbabweans scatterlings. He kind of popped up on the radar. He was playing in the UK, playing universities cricket, and then came back to Zimbabwe and he took 5 wickets in a T20 game. Kind of a year or two ago, and that's when people really started to kind of stand up, to take notice of him. He also, in a one-day game, rescued a team, scored a list A 100, And so there was some chat about Brad Evans, which was quite interesting to follow, kind of on social media, kind of similar to, or not in the quite in the same way, but similar to how people spoke about Wesley Madavere before he debuted. You know, everyone knew about this youngster who was really good, and you know, was kind of waiting to see what they could do in the team. And Brad Evans to come out and play in your first, not just his first game of the World Cup, but his first ever World Cup game. Within your first year of touching international cricket for the first time, and hold it down like that was quite something. But I think, you know, having kind of watched some of his cricket and domestic cricket in Zimbabwe, there was a T20 final not so long ago, and he was bowling in almost the same scenario, almost the same context. Actually, his team had batted first. I can't remember exactly what they got, a middling total. The other team looked like getting it. And then wickets started to fall, and Evans had to bowl the last over, last or second to last, but he bowled at the death and kind of just shut the game down and won the game. So yeah, we knew then we've got something here. But it's great. It's great to have kind of this new exciting talent bubbling up, and I think the vital thing as well. The generation that came before Brad Evans, like players such as Sean Williams, especially, but the whole generation, they came up in a Zimbabwean cricket kind of system or a team, the teams they played in, basically without seniors, without old pros who'd been playing the game for years and years, because there was that kind of schism in Zimbabwean cricket. And so for a player like Brad Evans, for players like Blessing Muzarabani and Wesley Madavere, Milton Shumba, coming into a team and having and playing alongside a guy who's been playing since 2007, who played in the very first T20 World Cup, like Sean Williams, or someone like Raza, who's you know, played around the world, played in T20 leagues, the Caribbean, Bangladesh. It's a good environment for these youngsters. So good for him, good for Brad Evans. He did well.
Absolutely. I mean, just holding your nerve in that situation was, you know, took an awful lot of an awful lot of courage. And you know, he I mean, just looking at that last over, it really was as tight as it could be. You know, the first couple of balls, I think the first one went for 3, then I think he tried a slow ball, went for a boundary, but then
his slow balls are usually pretty good as well. I wasn't surprised that he went to the slow ball. That's the other thing, he's known for, different variations.
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, it was, the last 3 balls in that over were pretty amazing, really, if you think about the amount of pressure he was under.
That dot ball, especially the dot ball, because that just built a little something, you know. And he put an extra. He's also got along with his slower balls, he's also got a quicker one. He's got a noticeably quicker ball. He usually bowls in the kind of 80 mile an hour, 82 mile an hour kind of area. But he can actually bowl a little faster than that. He's got a quicker one as well, and that dot ball was vital.
I'm not sure if that dot ball was the quicker delivery. I think
the play in the miss, outside off. It was a slightly quicker one. No,
it's fantastic over. I'm going to kind of take you to that last ball though, when the ball gets played out. I think it was Sekonda Raza who kind of feels it, goes into the keeper. I mean, for me, it kind of had shades of the, you know, as an England/Bangladesh cricket follower, you know, shades of the 2019 World Cup final where just, you know, I think it was Jason Roy then who kind of fielded the ball, throws it into Joss Butler, who kind of, you know, takes down the stumps, and, you know, the rest is history. But it was similar there, where the ball came into the keeper, slight fumble. I mean, did you have your heart, was your heart in your mouth
absolutely. Yeah, time slows down, you know. It's just in the moment. But yeah, Regis is a good keeper. He's I'm sure it's not easy in keeping in such different conditions. And I don't think it was the best throw, actually. Raza did the right thing. He threw to the keeper's end, but could have been a slightly better throw. But yeah, little bit of a fumble, but he recovered. He
Well,
recovered well.
it all adds to the drama, doesn't it? It's
It does.
yeah,
It does.
and what a finish it was. And yeah, two hugely precious points for Zimbabwe, which actually really does stand them in good stead with, you know, with a realistic chance of kind of qualifying for the semis with sort of one or two results, which aren't actually outlandish results, kind of going their way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and most especially the game against Bangladesh, I think, because that's really. I know Zimbabwe beaten Netherlands recently at the qualifiers, and will believe that they can beat India. Optimistically, perhaps, but they will believe that they can beat India. But I think Bangladesh is going to be a really tight game. I don't think you can call it. I mean, Zimbabwe are kind of on something of a hot streak here. But if you look at Zimbabwe v Bangladesh over the years, I don't know. I mean, just looking at the recent stats, you'd call it for Bangladesh, wouldn't you?
I'm not. I mean, yeah, I'm not so sure. I mean, let's look into this in a bit more detail in terms of this crunch game. I mean, the way that I see it, yeah, the confidence arc of both teams is totally different, I would say. So,
yeah,
you know, Zimbabwe on a real high at the moment, and I think, you know, that series in Zimbabwe against Bangladesh, I think it was back in sort of August time, where they beat Bangladesh for the first time in about 20 years in ODIs. Okay, different format, but you know, still should give an awful lot of confidence there. And you know, Bangladesh, on the other hand, if we look at their World Cup campaign so far, yeah, it's been pretty underwhelming. A scrappy 9-run victory against the Netherlands. And really, whereas the bowling, I would say, has kind of looked okay. Okay, they ran into a red hot Riley Rousseau against South Africa the other day, where he was just in the zone, smashing the ball to all parts. But even then, you know, the bowlers kind of came good in the last sort of 5 overs, dragged it back again. But yeah, by that stage, you know, South Africa always looking to get more than 204 they got in the end. And then, yeah, the Bangladesh batters just could not cope with the pace and the bounce from Nortje, really. He ended up getting 3 wickets, I think, from his first 10 balls. And then, yeah, they were 4 down within the power play. And that was that, really. So, yeah, the way that I would look at Bangladesh's campaign, to summarize it very quickly, is, yeah, their batting, yeah, is in all sorts of problems at the moment, or is encountering all sorts of problems at the moment. And I don't see any kind of easy answers or any discernible kind of improvement that might be made in the near future. So, I mean, I'm a natural pessimist anyway when it comes to Bangladesh in big games, or indeed any game. So, yeah, the way that I look at it, I think, you know, Zimbabwe are on a high, Bangladesh really aren't. And so, yeah, there's really not much to kind of split between the teams at all.
But it might actually come down to on Saturday, because you know, Zimbabwe did the right thing against Pakistan in batting first. Zimbabwe are not. You're speaking about Bangladesh's batting being a little shaky. Well, Zimbabwe are in a totally dissimilar position. Like, Raza obviously is in a potent form, but Zimbabwe are a much better team when they set a total, and then the bowlers can kind of get to work. So I wonder to what extent that the toss might be important in the Bangladesh game, and also kind of whose fast bowlers stand up on the day. They do say that it's bowlers that win you T20 games, don't they? I mean, you can see how there's kind of elements of both teams that would really probably enjoy Australian bowling in Australian conditions for a change. I mean, Zimbabwe definitely enjoyed Perth. Those tall fast bowlers. Zimbabwean pitches used to be much quicker, but have really slowed down in recent years. So to kind of see them kind of unleashed on a proper Australian bouncy track was great. But Bangladesh have fast bowlers of their own, and I think maybe that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, yeah, you're right. Bangladesh's sort of fast bowling unit has kind of been one of their biggest pluses in recent times. I kind of describe it as a bit of a hidden strength because it's not what you would normally associate with Bangladesh at all. But yeah, they've gone to great pains to kind of develop a fast bowling group there. And Alan Donald, who's the coach there at the moment, has done a lot of good work with the likes of Tuskin Ahmed, who kind of leads that attack. The one thing that I would say, if I was being sort of hypercritical about Tuskin and maybe the others as well, if you looked at that game against South Africa, once kind of Riley Rousseau really got stuck into Tuskin, I think basically he took 21 runs off Tuskin's second over, which I think was the third over in the power play. So once he'd done that, it was very difficult for Tuskin to kind of come back and to kind of respond. And it's interesting because I actually see him as a better, maybe not a better, but I see him as a red ball test bowler principally. So I still feel he's learning. Certainly in T20 cricket, he's learning. I think, if I'm being hypercritical, he could have maybe mixed his lengths up a little bit more against Riley Rousseau. If you saw a lot of the kind of the boundaries, the sixes he was hitting were pretty straight, kind of sort of long on in that sort of area. So you would expect that, maybe they were bowling a touch too full to him. So yeah, there's certainly, a bit of learning there that, basically they're not the finished article by any means. And yeah, I think you're right. It's whichever team's kind of fast bowlers kind of adapts and responds to the pitch will go a long way to kind of staking a claim to victory.
Yeah. Zimbabwe does have a long and checkered history as a team that kind of other teams play to get themselves back into some nick. I mean, I can't tell you the number of, I mean, this is anecdotal and experiential, of course, but the number of players who've turned up on a tour to Zimbabwe or have been in terrible form, and then suddenly find something and score 100 or take 5 wickets against them, or a team that's losing and needs a spark to kind of turn their World Cup campaign around. It certainly wouldn't be the first time. Although you say you're kind of pessimistic about Bangladeshi cricket, and perhaps I should be about Zimbabwean cricket, and perhaps it's inevitable when the teams that you follow are not at the top of the world game. But there's a kind of indomitable, kind of almost crazy optimistic streak in Zimbabwean cricket fans, and certainly in me. You kind of always think, "Wow, this is the day, boys. This is the World Cup."
Yeah, no, I mean, I can absolutely relate to that. I think, a similar vibe in kind of Bangladesh supporters. So I remember after, it was a scrappy win against the Dutch, but they got 2 points. I'm talking about Bangladesh here in their first game, and they only won by 9 runs. It wasn't all that convincing, but actually after that win, it kind of sets off that train of thinking inside you, thinking, well, actually they've got 2 points now. If they can just kind of scrap another couple of wins,
and there's rain around, there's games being shared, points being shared, games rained off. I think both groups are still open. Both groups are still wide open. I don't think anyone's kind of completely discounted yet in either of the groups, especially after today's kind of games being rained off as well in Group A.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think what we're saying is it sounds like it's going to basically be a tie and maybe go down to a super over. I mean, I I mean, I always dislike being asked predictions on how games are going to turn out, so I'm not going to ask you that. But yeah, I mean, I think we're in for a thrilling game. The only a downside for me, and I presumably yourself as well, is that it's an eye-wateringly early start. Certainly in the UK, it's 3 a.m. For us. Probably not too dissimilar for yourself.
No, not too dissimilar. And I'm wondering whether to go to bed early or just stay up. It used to, whenever Zimbabwe used to tour Australia years and years ago when I was, or the tours that they did go on when I was a kid watching cricket, it became kind of and tours to New Zealand, a kind of a ritual. You wake up early in the middle of the night, pop the kettle on, and you're the only one up, and you turn the telly on, and you're watching Zim play down under or the other side of the world. I quite like that ritual. So as much as it's kind of an early morning start, there's nothing else to do between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning, so I may as well be watching some cricket. But yeah, I think you might have called it with this tie this tie prediction. Yeah, I wouldn't. The way this World Cup has gone, I wouldn't be all that surprised.
Yeah, no, I think whatever happens, it'll be a close game for sure. But yeah, I mean, being a Bangladesh supporter, I'm always saying this. Being a UK-based Bangladesh supporter is horribly painful because, yeah, whenever Bangladesh are playing tests, it's like a 4 a.m. start, and not, and also it's a 4 a.m. start in like January, where it's absolutely, you really don't want to get out of bed at 4 a.m. in January in the UK. But let's move on then. And so we've looked at the kind of the preview of Sunday's game, but yeah, also keen to kind of explore a little bit of background in terms of the relationship between the two cricket countries of Zimbabwe and Bangladesh. So I think, as we were saying before, they played each other a lot of times over the last sort of decade or so. And yeah, interesting to get your views on it. From my point of view, they have supported one another's cricket at different times. But there's also, I would say, an element, and I don't know if this has changed actually after what happened yesterday, and also what happened in the series in Zimbabwe back in August. But I would say there's always an element within Bangladesh sort of fans. There's an element who always are a little bit dismissive of Zimbabwe, and the fact that Bangladesh, when it always seems to happen that they've lost against a team like the West Indies, say, and then they end up playing a series against Zimbabwe, they'll probably end up winning. And so yeah, the fans always seem to, or not all the fans I would say, but certainly there's an element of Bangladesh fans who have a bit of a dismissive attitude towards sort of Zimbabwean cricket. But just interested to get your views on the dynamics of that relationship.
Yeah, it's a storied and kind of shared past that these two teams have. I wouldn't know the kind of the numbers off by heart, but I'm sure that they've played each other more than they have anyone else, especially in the last 10 years, they say, and possibly even for the last 20 years. Next year is going to be 20 years since I covered my first cricket match, and honestly, in that whole time period as well, I remember watching Bangladesh play in Zimbabwe in, was it 2000, 2001. I think Andy Blichnote might have got a hat trick in a test match at Royal Sports Club. That's the first time I saw Bangladesh play in Zimbabwe, and since then they have had a lot of tussles, and interestingly, from the Zimbabwean side, like a lot of Zimbabwean fans remember those early days when Zimbabwe were the team who were expected to win, and it hasn't been all that easy to kind of, it's been one of those painful things, kind of adjusting to the reality that Bangladesh has overtaken Zimbabwe. But I think in terms of the kind of not the needle so much as kind of the atmosphere between the two teams when they play. The not even tension really, but I think it comes from two teams who both have know each other well, have played each other often, but are not so far really separated in the skill levels of the cricket that's happening. Ryan Ball said something interesting after the Australia tour recently. I think he might have been on the Grade Cricketer or one of these podcasts, and they asked him, or it could have been Brad Evans actually. Now that I can't remember, it was one of them. But asked him, did the Australians sledge you at all? You hear about going tours to Australia and sledging, and he was like, no, they were nice actually. And he said he didn't think that they saw Zimbabwe as a threat. So it's so it was very friendly cricket. So I think perhaps, and it's not something that perhaps you can add to this as well. But as someone who enjoys watching cricket, I don't mind kind of a bit of drama in cricket and two teams really standing up to each other. Obviously, you would never want any lines to be crossed or anything like that. And I'm not a huge fan of sledging either. But two teams who are quite closely matched, like really, really going at each other, it makes for absorbing cricket. It makes for very watchable cricket. And I think that's another element of Zimbabwe-Bangladesh games over the years. Not a lot of boring cricket being played. Even when Bangladesh have thrashed Zimbabwe, it's a spectacular kind of fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd agree with a lot of that. I think, whenever they do meet, there's there's a huge amount of competitive kind of spirit
like brothers fight.
I like that metaphor for sure. And actually, we were talking a bit earlier, actually off air, where sometimes it does spill over because there was an incident, wasn't there, between Muzarabani and Tuskin Ahmed, who really kind of faced off. If you haven't seen it, Google Muzarabani and Tuskin face off, and basically their heads are almost touching. Basically Tuskin was batting at the time, and I don't know if there was a bouncer or a stare or something from Muzarabani, which he didn't quite like. So there was definitely a confrontation. This was in a test match, which I think we were saying, I think it was earlier on this year. So there's definitely a bit of needle there at times.
And it makes for very watchable World Cup games. That's why you want I think you want this sort of narrative in World Cups. And I think it's also like, it's part of kind of making a case for teams like Zimbabwe and Bangladesh and Netherlands and Ireland. I mean, to kind of spread the net even wider. What teams like this bring to a World Cup as well, because all these teams have their own histories and they're all kind of a valuable part of wider cricket. And that's great to see the positivity about Zimbabwean cricket at the moment, because it does feel kind of like Zimbabwe have been welcomed back into the fold somewhat into international cricket, and kind of showing everyone what they might have missed. Not Bangladesh though. Bangladesh know exactly what to expect when they're playing Zimbabwe.
For sure. One other thing I was going to say about the kind of the relationship between the two countries. I mean, I was speaking to Secunda Raza on a previous episode, and he was very kind of grateful for the opportunities given to him playing in tournaments in Bangladesh, so franchise tournaments, specifically the BPL, but not only the BPL, actually he's played in other kind of city-based sort of tournaments. The Dhaka Premier League is one of them. So he's someone who spent a lot of time out there, and I think he's really appreciative of the chances that have been given to him, and then also another kind of link between the two countries, someone that we both know quite well, broadcaster, commentator Tino Mavoyo, who again I've had on the podcast a couple of times, and yeah, spends an awful. I think the last time he was on, he told me that he's been to Bangladesh in the last 10 years, maybe at least once a year, which is quite phenomenal.
Mm. Yeah, Tino Moyo, I honestly believe that, I mean, in televised cricket, there are great commentators and there are not so great commentators and kind of everything in between. And I honestly think Tino Moyo is one of the best commentators going. I love
100%.
You don't want someone who's just kind of filling dead air, telling you what you're seeing or what you can already see. Tino always kind of tells a story, brings an anecdote, not tells you what's happening, but why. He's a great who I've gotten to know fairly well in Zimbabwe as well. Yeah, a great guy.
No, he really is, and 100% agree with you. I think he's got a great voice for TV commentary, and he's really got that sort of gravitas. But yeah, some fine sort of Zimbabwean kind of broadcasting commentators, obviously. So Pommy and Bangwa,
absolutely,
that clip of him describing the final ball's kind of gone viral, and that was fantastic. And
Pommy Mug was another great commentator as well, just the kind of the energy he brings to the game. And I'd love to see them together actually. They have definitely worked together, but I'd love to see them at like a World Cup or something like that.
No, definitely. I'd pay money to watch that happen. So yeah, just kind of rounding things off. So I'm looking at my list of things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I think we've pretty much covered everything, apart from one thing, which again has, if you closely follow social media, in the run up to the Pakistan Zimbabwe game, there was only one topic that was being discussed, and that is Pac Bean, basically. And for me personally, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So much so that, and it's become such a big story that I saw Wisdom Online had done a whole article on what
an explainer.
Basically, it was like a 1,000 word explainer on Pac Bean. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? You go on Twitter, a lot of time it's just full of sort of toxic type stuff. But this story, it was just so genuinely hilarious that you could not fail but for it to raise a smile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the funny thing is, I actually remember when Pac Bean came to Zimbabwe, the actual guy, when he came as Mr. Bean, and it being quite a big deal, and people like sharing videos on WhatsApp, and it was kind of social media was ablaze, and then people were like, hang on, this is not the guy. this is not the guy.
Well, and someone was clearly furious about it and was harboring a grudge,
and we're still furious because this was a couple of years ago. This wasn't recently. I don't know if that's been part of the explainers as well. This was a few years ago. So clearly our friend Ngugi has been holding on to this grudge and just waiting. And how, what a kind of prophetic rage he had. We should have listened. We should have listened.
Absolutely. So, I'm sure Pakistan won't be making that mistake in the future.
I was glad to see the kind of the response from Pakistan's cricket fans as well. That, as you mentioned, it was kind of one of those positive touch points. It was really, there was not like, it could have become, a kind of trolling could have come into it, but I didn't get too much of a sense of that, at least between the Zimbabwean and Pakistan kind of Twitter community. That was quite wholesome in a way, you know, the kind of original responses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't put my finger on it, but it just made me laugh. It just made me smile constantly. And, you know, for some reason, I just want to know more about the story. And
what are the odds they get Rowan Atkinson out to Australia? If they make the semis, someo's got to make this happen, surely. If they make the finals, he's got to come and give them the World Cup, surely. I mean, a Zimbabwean can only dream.
It could happen. I think he's notoriously shy, so as a, you know, in terms of being a celebrity, but you never know. You never know. But Liam, I mean, what a point to round things up on. I mean, it's been a fantastic 45 minutes or so talking to you. Just great to sort of learn more insights about Zimbabwe cricket, the relationship between them and Bangladesh, and indeed what might happen on Sunday and the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. I always get a sense having these sorts of conversations that there's so much more to talk about. And I think with, especially with this kind of Zimbabwe-Bangladesh connection, there will always be kind of more to talk about. So I'd love to come on the show again at some point. And I'll definitely be watching on Sunday morning. I'll be up early with a cup of coffee.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I'll be setting my alarm, and for sure, this is a conversation to be reconvened.
Wonderful. Can't wait.
But yeah, great to have you on. And thank you, everyone, for watching the latest episode of the Sight Screen Cricket Journal podcast. Please do check out the Twitter feed there at SightScreenCJ, and please do visit the website as well. Until next time, goodbye for now.